Chapter 2191. Rumble. The entire Forbidden Zone was in turmoil again. Just where Luo Qingtong and the others were standing, in the sky above the center of the Forbidden Zone, dark clouds suddenly rolled and roared. The entire Forbidden Zone, and even the land of the fallen immortals, was shaken. The commotion was not any weaker than when the sector beasts were born. What's going on? In the Forbidden Zone, everyone's faces were filled with shock. They didn't know why there would be such a commotion and change in the land of the fallen immortals. Hadn't that ball of light already been born? The treasure that the extraterrestrial experts were fighting for had already belonged to Luo Qingtong. How could there still be such a big commotion and change? Could it be that there were other treasures in the Forbidden Zone? But that ball of light was already something that the extraterrestrial experts were fighting for. What treasure could be more precious than it? Everyone was thinking about this, and then they looked at the scene that had suddenly condensed in the sky. They saw an incomparably huge human face appear in the sky above the center of the Forbidden Zone. The face was extremely strange and ugly. When pieced together, it looked like a ferocious ghost monster. The lines on the face were constantly twisting and moving. Everyone looked at the shape of the human face. Suddenly, a sect member raised his hand and pointed at the huge human face. With a shocked expression he shouted, "Look, this isn't a human face. It's something formed by countless human faces mixed together. What the hell is this?" His voice was filled with indescribable panic and fear. Anyone who saw such a scene could not help but feel their hair stand on end. On the huge face, there were countless faces densely packed together. The expressions on these faces were different, and they were constantly changing and twisting. That was why the expression on the huge face was so strange and terrifying. Everyone looked at the huge face in the sky and felt their hair stand on end. Just as the person from the sect said, "What the hell was this? How could there be such a big commotion in the land of the fallen immortals at this time?" As for Luo Qingtong, she frowned when the huge face appeared. Not for any other reason, but when the huge face appeared, the little ball jumped up and rushed into her arms. Then it kept chirping something. Luo Qingtong couldn't understand its words, but she could hear the panic and fear in its words. Was this huge face coming for this little guy? Luo Qingtong narrowed her eyes. She raised her head and looked at the place where the giant face had appeared. Her blood-red eyes flickered, and she quickly saw the true appearance of the giant face. The densely packed human faces embedded in the huge human face had completely merged with the aura of the fallen immortal land. The faces were derived from the aura of the land of the deceased immortals. What are they? Luo Qingtong looked at the faces crowded together. The bloody light in her eyes flickered. Soon she had an idea. These human faces couldn't be the manifestation of the obsessions of the foreign race experts that died here, right? At this thought, Luo Qingtong's heart skipped a beat. She carefully looked at the densely packed human faces and quickly confirmed that her idea was correct. These human faces were really a collection of the obsessions of the foreign race experts. Chapter 2192. Rumble. With the appearance of the giant face, the aura in the land of the fallen immortals boiled even more violently. Violent auras filled the air. They thought that the opening of the land of the fallen immortals would cause the aura to weaken. Now that the giant face had appeared, the aura became even denser. The black aura spread throughout the land of the fallen immortals, causing everyone in the forbidden area to panic. Oh no! The aura in the land of the fallen immortals is getting stronger. Yeah. Quick, let's get out of here or we'll all die here. Everyone's heart was filled with panic. The land of the fallen immortals was never a friendly place. If it weren't for the fact that the land of the fallen immortals would open for a period of time every year, causing the aura inside to weaken, they wouldn't have come here. But now, the aura in the land of the fallen immortals was getting stronger again. It wasn't time for the land of the fallen immortals to close yet, but the aura was getting stronger. No matter how stupid they were, they could guess that it had something to do with the giant face that had appeared in the forbidden area. Everyone panicked and hurriedly asked Luo Qingtong to take them away. After all, they were Luo Qingtong's slaves now. They couldn't leave without permission. However, as soon as they spoke, Luo Qingtong's voice sounded faintly. "It's too late." Luo Qingtong looked around as she spoke. Thick black fog had already spread out in the center of the forbidden area. It was even more corrosive than the aura in the land of the fallen immortals. In the blink of an eye, the black fog spread from the edge of the forbidden area. A few disciples who came into contact with the black fog screamed in agony. Then they quickly turned into walking corpses. They screamed shrilly as they rushed towards their fellow disciples. The latter didn't have time to react. Many of them were pushed to the ground. Left with no other choice, the others took action and killed the corrupted disciples. Everyone retreated with pale faces, not knowing what to do. The aura in the forbidden area was too terrifying. If it was the aura of the land of the fallen immortals outside, it would be fine. They had immortal jade bones on them, so they could just barely hold on for a while. As long as they were fast enough, they could still escape. However, at this moment, they were surrounded in the center of the forbidden area. The aura inside was enough to kill them the moment they touched it. Even the immortal jade bones aura was of no use. What the hell is going on? Everyone felt despair in their hearts. The Heavenly Yuan sect master and the others, who had originally planned on talking to Luo Qingtong about pledging their allegiance, paled at this sight. "Miss Luo, do you have any ideas?" They looked hopefully at Luo Qingtong. If there was anyone here who had a solution, it would probably be Luo Qingtong. Chapter 2193. Luo Qingtong responded in a low voice. She glanced at the spreading black fog and said to Su Yu and the others, "Distribute some of the blood-colored immortal jade bones to them." Luo Qingtong had given Su Yu and the others a lot of purified blood-colored immortal jade bones. They hadn't absorbed much when they recovered, so they immediately responded and distributed some of the purified blood-colored immortal jade bones to the people from the sections. These blood-colored immortal jade bones had a stronger aura than ordinary immortal jade bones, and the power of blood was also thicker. After the people from the sects received the blood-colored immortal jade bones, they were no longer attacked by the black fog. But this alone wasn't enough. Luo Qingtong stared intently at the spreading black fog. Crack, crack, crack. Amidst the black fog, the sound of rusty gears grinding could be heard continuously. It also sounded like something sharp was scraping in the air, making one's hair stand on end. Roar. As those voices continued to ring out, sharp and sinister whistles began to ring out one after another. Then, everyone saw one figure after another stepping out of the thick black fog. Their skeletons were wretched, their eye sockets were empty, and dark flames were rising from them. These figures that appeared in the thick fog were actually skeletons. Those are the corpses of the foreign experts who died here. Seeing this scene, many people from the sects cried out with pale faces. They're all alive. When their voices rang out, Luo Qing's eyes clearly saw the white skeletons standing up one after another in the places where the black fog filled the air. At this moment, they were surrounded by an army of skeletons that stretched as far as the eye could see. Obviously, these skeletons were all under the control of the giant human face in the sky. Seeing this, Luo Qingtong instantly figured out many things. She recalled that Bai Suqing had once told her that divine beasts would pass by the restricted area of the fallen immortal land from time to time. Therefore, they suspected that there were divine beasts among them. Now, it was confirmed that the divine beasts were actually the power of the giant sector beast's light ball to protect itself. Then there was a problem. The foreign experts in the restricted area were all dead. The sects in the hidden world knew of the dangers in the restricted area, so they wouldn't go in easily. In that case, who was the mythical beast flowing light fighting against? Or rather, what kind of power were they fighting against? Luo Qingtong looked at the giant human face floating in the sky. She already had an answer in her heart. Obviously, these foreign experts were still unwilling to give up after their deaths. They wanted to obtain the sector beast, so their minds were entangled and wouldn't dissipate even after death. When the fallen immortal land was formed, they had always been coveting the sector beast. But this time, when the sector beasts were born, they were scattered by the majestic and vast spirit chi light pillars and hurricanes. They could not gather together at all, and they could not get close to the sector beasts. Under such circumstances, they had deliberately loosened the restrictions of the forbidden zone and allowed people from the outside sects to enter. This was all to prevent the birth of the sector beast. After the sector beast was born, they would no longer have any chance to obtain the sector beast. When Luo Qingtong thought of this, she immediately understood what was going on. At this moment, swoosh. Chapter 2194. Oh, my mommy mia. Little Pig ran like a gust of wind with his two little ears perked up. He dashed out of the black mist. He was picking up and purifying the celestial jade bones with the ancient heavenly spirit wood when the black mist spread over. Then the white bones came back to life. Fortunately, he ran fast enough. Otherwise, he might have been made into a pork hot pot. It ran to Luo Qingtong's side and handed the useless ring containing the ancient heavenly spiritual wood to Luo Qingtong. Then, with a look of lingering fear, it patted its chest with its little hoof and said, "Oh my God, I was scared to death." "Hey, what is this?" He looked at the little ball in Luo Qingtong's arms and poked it with his little hoof. Instantly, Xiao Tuanzi jumped to his feet. Chirp chirp chirp. It bounced toward Little Pig, but was stopped by Little Pig with one of its hoof. Wait. The corner of Little Pig's mouth twitched as he looked at the little meatball that was struggling and jumping around in his hand. This guy that looks like a glutinous rice ball, is that Sector Beast? Just like Luo Qingtong, Little Pig was in disbelief. Oh my god. What happened to being domineering and cool? What happened to being more awesome than an ancient divine beast? Did Luo Qingtong take such a huge risk to contract with a meatball just now? Little Pig looked at the little ball of meat in his hands. His whole body, no, Pig was a little uncomfortable. What's the use of this little guy? Is he going to throw it to the enemy to choke them to death? This was simply too hilarious. Wait, is it because you cut it out that it's stunted? Little Pig shook the little Sector Beast in his hands. The little Sector Beast looked at him with a gloomy face. Then it roared and bit at Little Pig's hoof. Little Pig wanted to see what ability this little Sector Beast had and whether it was affected in any way. Logically speaking, when a Sector Beast was born, it should be an adult. This was because they weren't real beasts, but the manifestation of the laws of heaven and earth. It was not that Little Pig had never seen a Sector Beast before, but he had never seen one as small as this. Could it be that this guy was really affected by Luo Qingtong's autopsy and that it wasn't time for him to be born yet? If that was the case, he didn't know if its ability was still there. However, before it could check, the little ball bit it. Little Pig swung his little hooves and jumped on the spot while squealing. Little Furball, on the other hand, ran back into Luo Qingtong's arms. You bastard. Little Pig clenched his teeth as he looked at it. However, before he could run over and grab Xiao Tuanzi, the giant face in the sky moved. Brr. It opened its mouth wide and roared. The white bones in the black fog rushed towards Luo Qingtong and the others. These white bones were formed from the corpses of the alien experts. Chapter 2195. All of you come here. Luo Qingtong looked at the army of skeletons rushing over with a very cold expression. Back then, the foreign experts who came here to fight for the Sector Beast were all above the Venerable Realm. Now, even if these skeletons only had 10 to 20% of their strength, they were still at the Holy Venerable Realm. Not to mention that the black fog around them was corrosive. The people from the various sects would be at a disadvantage if they were to fight in the black fog. After all, the blood immortal jade bones that Luo Qingtong had obtained before were limited. Once the power of the blood immortal jade bones was exhausted, Su Yu and the others, as well as the people of the sects, would not be able to resist the attack of the black fog. Luo Qingtong thought and immediately gathered Su Yu and the others. Among them were those who had already sworn to become Luo Qingtong's slaves. Fortunately, Luo Qingtong had made them swear before. Otherwise, who knew what kind of trouble would have happened in the forbidden area at this moment? Luo Qingtong did not have the time to deal with them at this time. But now there was no need to worry. These people were already on her side and they even helped Luo Qingtong. Luo Qingtong was very glad that she had not killed these people along with beast tamer King Guguju. Yes. When the people of the sects heard Luo Qingtong's words, they immediately ran over to her. The young girl was their only hope and way out. Not to mention that they had already sworn to become Luo Qingtong's slaves. Even if they had not sworn at this moment in the forbidden area, only Luo Qingtong could save them. The crowd ran over in a panic. Luo Qingtong raised her hand and released the ancient heavenly spirit wood from the waist ring in her hand. Bang! The ancient heavenly spirit wood was much taller than the sapling from before. It was about 5 meters tall. Also, the waist ring in Luo Qingtong's hand was refined by Tian Mingzi, so the space inside was extraordinarily big. Otherwise, it would not be able to hold it. Swoosh! After the ancient heavenly spirit wood landed on the ground, it immediately stretched out its branches and leaves. Wherever its branches and leaves went, the black fog could not get close at all. In an instant there was a vacuum between Luo Qingtong and the others. Seeing this scene, the people of the sects and the Sky Yuan sect were both surprised and delighted. Luo Qingtong's methods were endless. Was she really just a young girl from the secular world? The people of the Sky Yuan sect could not help but think. As for the people from the other sects, they swore to be Luo Qingtong's slaves unwillingly. At this moment he no longer had any complaints in his heart. Luo Qingtong had too many tricks up her sleeve. They wouldn't be at a disadvantage if they followed such a person. If they performed better in the future, they might even be able to enjoy endless benefits. Chapter 2196. Oh my god. Oh no. I forgot. That girl named Yun Shi. The one you gave the beast mark inheritance to in the Broken Star Valley. She deliberately stopped outside the center of the forbidden area for you and lured away the contracted beasts of the beast tamer King Guguju and the others. Oh my mamma mia, how could it forget about this? No wonder I kept feeling that something was wrong when I collected those immortal jade bones. I forgot about one person. Luo Qingtong's expression changed when she heard this. No wonder she didn't see the golden-winged condor and the others when she tortured the beast tamer King Guguju. Luo Qingtong didn't expect that Yunshi lured them away outside the center of the forbidden area. You guys stay here. I'll go get them. The beast tamer King Guguju and the others were dead, and the golden-winged condor and the others had recovered from the control of the beast tamer spell. They should be on their way here right now. As Luo Qingtong thought about it, her figure shot forward like an arrow. Hey wait, I'll go with you. Little Pig said as he quickly hopped on his four hooves to catch up. Bang. Outside the center of the forbidden area, Yunshi lay on the back of the golden-winged condor. The golden-winged condor carried her and rushed toward the center of the forbidden area with a group of other demonic beasts. They had completely regained consciousness after the death of the beast tamer King Guguju. It was just that Yunshi fell into a coma after using the beast mark inheritance. Because the group of demonic beasts was summoned by her, they could only wait for her by her side. Fortunately, Yunshi woke up not long after she fell into a coma. After asking about her relationship with Luo Qingtong, the golden-winged condor carried her toward the center of the forbidden area. However, no one expected that there would be a change in the center of the forbidden area halfway. Looking at the white bones waking up one after another, the group of demonic beasts didn't know what was going on. They could only try their best to rush toward the center of the forbidden area. However, there were simply too many skeletons. Coupled with the invasion of the black mist. Fortunately, Yunshi had the blood celestial jade bone that Luo Qingtong had given her. Otherwise, they would have been corroded before these skeletons could do anything. Just as the golden-winged condor and the others were desperately killing the skeletons, Luo Qingtong arrived. Bang! The young girl's sword was like a dragon, and in an instant, it swept into the group of the golden-winged condors, killing all the white bones that were entangled around them. Go! Luo Qingtong rushed to the golden-winged condor and said to it. It was only then that the latter discovered that Luo Qingtong's strength had actually increased to peak holy exalted level. Oh my god, isn't this little girl's strength increasing too quickly? Chapter 2199. Master. Su Yu and the others quickly surrounded Luo Qingtong after she rushed in. Yes. Luo Qingtong nodded, then looked at Yunshi who was on the golden-winged condor. The latter's body was covered in blood, and she looked very scary. Obviously, Yunshi had paid a great price to forcibly summon the golden-winged condor and the others. The bloody light in Luo Qingtong's eyes flickered, and she quickly found out everything about Yunshi's body. She had temporarily lost her strength, and the time to recover was not long. At the same time, the power of the beast mark inheritance in Yunshi's body had disappeared. It seemed that Yunshi had used the forbidden power of the Zhuge 13 beast mark inheritance to become like this. However, this power could be recovered. Luo Qingtong watched the power of the beast mark in Yunshi's body slowly recover. However, at this speed it would take Yunshi a year and a half for her strength to recover. That was too long. And Luo Qingtong looked at the cracks on the beast mark in Yunshi's body. If it was not repaired, even if Yunshi's strength recovered in the future, the power she could use would be greatly reduced. It could be said that in order to help her this time, Yunshi had wasted most of the power of the beast mark inheritance. Luo Qingtong's eyes flashed and she remembered this in her heart. After leaving the land of the fallen immortals, she would find a way to help Yunshi restore the power of the beast mark in her body. However, the level of the Zhuge 13 beast mark was very high. Luo Qingtong would need the herbs to repair it, which were not available in the true Spill continent. She would have to see if she could find them in the extraterrestrial. Just as Luo Qingtong was thinking, she heard a series of fierce roars from outside. Then the army of bones that had been left behind by Luo Qingtong and the golden-winged condor rushed over again. There seemed to be no end to those white bones. Too many extraterrestrial powerhouses had died here in the past. Perhaps it was because of the obsession of those extraterrestrial powerhouses after they died, but the bones gathered again after being smashed. It was no wonder that in this forbidden zone, there had been an endless stream of attacks aimed at the Sector Beast's light mass. They wanted to get the Sector Beast. If it wasn't for this, it would have been shattered by the divine beasts. It was impossible for it to exist for so many years. Seeing this scene, Luo Qingtong's eyes narrowed. She looked at the endless white bone army and said to the people around her, "Follow closely." Let's go. As she spoke, she waved her hand, and the ancient heaven spirit wood that she had placed on the ground was pulled up by her. Shwa. The ancient heavenly spirit wood floated above her head as she held it up with one hand. Go. Luo Qingtong shouted in a low voice, and in an instant her figure swept out. Chapter 2200. But even so, with so many of them, the number of bones they cleared was still very impressive. The group of people kept approaching the edge of the forbidden area. Luo Qingtong and the others were about to leave the center of the forbidden area, and the army of bones could not stop them at all. In the sky, the huge human face that was constantly changing its expression and shape roared fiercely at this moment. The sharp and sinister cry resounded through the sky in an instant. In the next second, its figure looked down at the world and suddenly rushed towards Luo Qingtong and the others. Boom! As its figure surged, the thick black fog between heaven and earth was like boiling water in an instant. It constantly surged and rolled violently towards Luo Qingtong and the others. Seeing this scene, the group of people following Luo Qingtong could not help but gasp in shock and fear. They didn't know if the strange tree above their heads could block the attack. After all, the black fog was enough to easily erode them. Now, the fog, stirred by the huge human face, was so dense that it almost turned into liquid. Countless black water droplets lingered around them and flew towards them. Ah! A sect disciple on the periphery of the ancient heaven spirit tree was distracted for a moment and was accidentally entangled by the attack of a skeleton. Then, with a bang, he was dragged out of the area covered by the ancient heaven spirit tree. In just an instant, his body was eroded into white bones. He didn't even have time to scream before he was transformed into a walking corpse. Then, those white bones rushed in the direction of the crowd with a greenish-black face. The blood-colored immortal jade bones on his body did not have any effect on the liquefied black fog. Everyone looked on and could not help but feel a burst of fear in their hearts. Their bodies also trembled fiercely. Miss Luo. Some of the sect disciples with weaker mental fortitude almost couldn't help but kneel on the ground. They looked in the direction of Luo Qingtong and could not help but shout loudly. A group of people from a sect still had to rely on a 15 or 16-year-old girl. If word of this spread, no one would believe it. But now it had really happened. Not only that, everyone saw Luo Qingtong as their only savior. If there was really someone who could lead them out of here, it would definitely be Luo Qingtong. Everyone regretted it now. If they had known that the girl was so powerful and extraordinary, why would they have gone against her in the first place? If they had stood on her side with the people from the Sky Yuan sect, they would not have to worry and be afraid. After all, Luo Qingtong was a person who valued kindness and friendship. Her methods were ruthless, but she did not lose her principles. As her enemy, it was naturally the most painful and terrible thing in this world. However, being her friend and companion was the happiest thing in the world. Because as long as it was within the girl's power, she would protect you better than anyone else. At this moment, Su Yu and the others were beside Luo Qingtong. Then, it was the people from the Sky Yuan sect. Finally, it was the turn of the people from the sects who had sworn loyalty to them. Chapter 2201. Their hearts were filled with fear and trepidation. At the same time, they felt a deep sense of regret. As they spoke, Luo Qingtong turned around and noticed the rolling black fog. Bang! Her gaze froze. Seeing that the black fog was about to invade the 3 inches of light around the ancient heavenly spirit tree, Luo Qingtong threw out a pile of immortal jade bones. Throw out all the immortal jade bones in your hands. Luo Qingtong said in a low voice. She had a limited number of immortal jade bones that hadn't been purified yet. Once the ancient heavenly spirit tree couldn't withstand the black fog, Luo Qingtong would be the first to abandon them, just as the other sects thought. After all, she had to shrink the ancient heavenly spirit tree and concentrate its energy if she wanted to protect Su Yu and the others. Luo Qingtong didn't know what all life was equal or that life was priceless. She only knew that the lives of the people around her were more valuable than anyone else's. Yes. When the people from the various sects heard this, they immediately threw out the immortal jade bones in their hands. They were afraid that if they threw them out any later, the ancient heavenly spirit tree wouldn't be able to withstand the black fog. At that time, all of them would die. Everyone threw out all the immortal jade bones in their hands. In order to enter the land of the fallen immortals, these sects naturally had a lot of immortal jade bones in their hands. They weren't like Luo Qingtong and the others, who could refine and purify immortal jade bones. Therefore, at Luo Qingtong's command, the immortal jade bones flew toward the ancient heavenly spirit tree in the sky like scattered petals. The latter received the nourishment of the death energy contained in the immortal jade bones and instantly emitted beams of clear light from its canopy. It forced out the black fog that was about to invade its canopy. At the same time, the giant human face rushed to the front of the ancient heavenly spirit tree. The giant face opened its mouth wide. Countless faces twisted their expressions and screeched sharply, biting toward Luo Qingtong and the others. Buzz. The radiance of the ancient heavenly spirit wood, which had been strengthened by the death energy of the immortal jade bones, was gradually suppressed. Seeing this, Luo Qingtong frowned. As for the people from the sects on the periphery, they had already begun their attack. Boom, boom, boom. Their attacks landed on the giant face that was rushing towards them. Countless human faces were shattered and reformed by their attacks, but they were not damaged at all. These human faces were all manifestations of the consciousness of the extraterrestrial experts. Ordinary attacks were useless against them. Only attacks that contained mental power were useful. However, how many people from the various sects could launch such an attack? Even if they could, how many people would be able to hurt them? The huge face whizzed over, and under everyone's horrified gazes, it suddenly opened its mouth wide and bit towards them. It was going to devour them along with the ancient heavenly spiritual wood. Countless faces twisted and shrieked, waiting to capture Luo Qingtong and the others in one fell swoop. Seeing this, many people from the various sects were so frightened that their legs went weak and they fell to the ground. At this moment, Luo Qingtong's figure suddenly leaped out from among them. Swoosh. Chapter 2202. Get down? As Luo Qingtong's voice rang out, the life and death sword in her hand vibrated. With a clang, the black and white longsword in Luo Qingtong's hand suddenly split into two. Annihilation. The life blade and the death blade were held in her hands at the same time. These two swords represented the power of life and the power of death at the same time. Regardless of whether it was the exuberant power of life or the most evil power of death in the world, they were both the nemesis of the Yin souls in this world. Especially the power of death. The Yin souls could still resist the power of life by relying on their own death aura. However, the power of death was of the same origin as them and was of a much higher level than their own aura. There was almost no way to resist the power of this sword. At this moment, Luo Qingtong transformed the life and death sword into two long swords and held them in her hands at the same time. The bloody light in her eyes flickered violently at this moment. Then she raised her hands and swung the swords. Boom. Two rays of annihilation suddenly blasted out from her hands. They intertwined with each other and turned into two rays of light of the two extremes of yin and yang, rushing forward wildly. The light of annihilation blasted out by Luo Qingtong could originally transform other forces for her own use. Now, the two long swords in her hands swung out a ray of light at the same time. The two rays of light annihilated each other and transformed into the shape of the 8 trigrams of yin and yang at the same time, rushing forward violently. Even though the thought bodies formed by these extraterrestrial experts were extremely powerful and were almost unafraid of any soul attacks, they still couldn't help but tremble when they saw the rays blasted out by Luo Qingtong. Boom. Luo Qingtong's two rays of light almost brushed past the scalps of the people lying on the ground in front of her and flew towards the huge face. At this moment, the latter was opening its mouth wide, waiting to devour Luo Qingtong and the others along with the ancient heavenly spiritual wood. When it saw Luo Qingtong's two rays of light flying towards it, its heart trembled, but it was already too late to move. Boom. Luo Qingtong's two rays of light directly blasted into the huge face's wide-open mouth. Bang. The mouth of the huge face suddenly burst open. The countless human faces that made up the huge mouth howled miserably as they turned into ashes in front of everyone. In front of everyone's eyes, half of the huge face was directly blasted apart, leaving only the upper half of the face above the mouth. It's the power of life and death. The human faces that made up the giant face screamed in terror, making shrill sounds that only they could understand. They looked at the two black and white swords in Luo Qingtong's hands with shock and fear. Their hearts were filled with unspeakable fear. The other party actually had such a heaven-defying artifact in his hands. Although the consciousness bodies of these extraterrestrial experts were formed purely from their consciousness, they didn't have a physical body. They were the lingering wills of all the foreign experts who died in the land of the fallen immortals. They were the embodiment of all the death chi and hostility in the land. But they were still ghosts after all. Under the attack of Luo Qingtong's life and death two right swords, they couldn't even escape and turned into ashes. If not for the fact that their bodies were large enough, the attack just now would have been enough to kill them completely. Buzz. Chapter 2203. The land of the deceased immortals existed because of these human faces. The black fog was created by them. Now that almost half of those human faces had been killed by Luo Qingtong, the aura in the land of the deceased immortals had naturally dissipated. At this moment, the Star Alliance Temple Master and the others, who were rushing toward the Forbidden Zone, felt the change in the aura around them, and their expressions changed slightly. The collective consciousness of those strong extraterrestrials has been injured. The Star Alliance Temple Master's face was filled with fanaticism. The power of the Sector Beast was actually so strong. The Star Alliance Temple Master didn't know that the attack was launched by Luo Qingtong. He thought that the person who had contracted the Sector Beast had obtained the Sector Beast and released it with its help. His heart was filled with excitement. The collective consciousness of those strong extraterrestrials was completely connected to the land of the deceased immortals. It could be said that as long as the land of the deceased immortals was not destroyed, the collective consciousness of those strong extraterrestrials would not be destroyed. The Star Alliance Temple Master had come prepared this time, so he naturally knew how to deal with the collective consciousness of those strong extraterrestrials. However, the people from the sects in the land of the deceased immortals didn't have the strength or ability to deal with the collective consciousness of those strong extraterrestrials. It must be that Sector Beast. Ah. Good. The Star Alliance Temple Master said good 3 times in a row. That Sector Beast was indeed extraordinary to be able to severely injure the collective consciousness of those strong extraterrestrials. He laughed loudly and continued to rush toward the Forbidden Zone with the people around him. He couldn't wait any longer. Yi Qianxian and the others who had originally been behind them had already quietly passed by them. At this moment, after sensing the change in the aura of the land of the deceased immortals, they suddenly stopped. "Master, it's the evil doctor." Bei Qing, Fengyu and the others were excited. They could feel the power of the heaven-conquering art that Luo Qingtong had used. That was a move that Yi Qianxian had created. In this world, only Yi Qianxian could use it. Of course, Luo Qingtong was added to the list. The evil doctor was actually fine. Not only that, but he had also injured the manifestation of those extraterrestrial experts' wills. Everyone was astonished to the extreme. Although they weren't afraid of the huge faces formed by the consciousness of these foreign powerhouses, it wouldn't be easy to deal with them. After all, he had the entire land of the fallen immortals to rely on. Unless they destroyed this place, they might not be able to do what the evil doctor did if they attacked directly without unleashing their full strength. But how strong was the evil doctor when he entered the immortal graveyard? Saint Emperor stage. Right now he was only at the Holy Venerable Realm. After all, they didn't sense the aura of an exalted realm breakthrough. But the level of the true Spill continent was too low. It was impossible to break through to the exalted realm. In other words, the evil doctor was able to injure the enormous human face with a strength below the exalt realm? Everyone was speechless as they thought about it. Oh my God, that's all they can do. Should they say, as expected of the person that Master had taken a fancy to? The more Bei Qing, Fengyu and the others came into contact with Luo Qingtong, the more they admired Yi Qianxian's foresight. When Master first met the evil doctor, the girl was only at the martial general realm. Or was she at the martial master realm? At that time the evil doctor was like an ant that they could kill with a puff of air. But Master had a discerning eye. He had taken a fancy to the evil doctor at first glance. After pursuing her several times, he had resolutely refused to let her go. Now, every time the evil doctor grew, it proved what he had said back then: the girl was a pearl in the sea lost to the world. Chapter 2204. Bang! In the center of the restricted area, Luo Qingtong's figure landed, but her expression was not so relaxed. The annihilation technique that Yi Qianxian had taught her was no longer as powerful as when she had been weak when she had advanced to the Holy Venerate realm. Otherwise, based on the strength she had been able to display before, this attack, coupled with the dual transformations of the life and death yin-yang swords, would have been enough to severely injure that huge face to the point where it could no longer transform. Now she had only injured half of its face. After all, this move had the advantage of catching them off guard. Once the consciousnesses of these Xenorace experts gathered and knew that she possessed such a divine weapon that could injure them, then the attacks that came down wouldn't be so easily effective. Sure enough, after Luo Qingtong had killed a small portion of their transformations, the extraterrestrial experts' consciousnesses did not dare to be careless anymore. Their gazes towards Luo Qingtong were filled with fear and apprehension. Even so, they were unwilling to let go of the little ball in her arms. They had waited so long for that Sector Beast, from when it was alive to after its death, just to obtain it. Especially since they were just a collection of consciousnesses. Once they obtained that sector beast, they could use the aura of the origin of laws on it to reconstruct their bodies. Even if they turned into a ghost body, it was still better than being imprisoned in the land of the deceased immortals with their consciousnesses lingering. Therefore, although the extraterrestrial experts' consciousnesses were very afraid of Luo Qingtong, they were still unwilling to leave. They surrounded Luo Qingtong and the others, circling around the entire ancient heaven spirit tree, constantly whistling and spiraling. When Luo Qingtong's attack blasted over, they immediately scattered in all directions. Then they immediately gathered again. Under its interference, the energy that the ancient heaven spirit tree had replenished from the immortal jade bones was constantly being depleted. If this went on, the ancient heaven spirit tree would not have enough power to resist the invasion of the surrounding black gas. At that time, Su Yu and the others would not be able to withstand the onslaught of the black mist. Even if it was Luo Qingtong, under the attack of the black fog, the strength of her attack would definitely be greatly affected. At that time, there would be an opportunity to take advantage of the gathering of the foreign experts' wills. Luo Qingtong thought and made a prompt decision. Let's go. As she spoke, she leaped forward and placed a finger on her forehead. In my name, release the seal. As Luo Qingtong's voice rang out, Little Pig's arrogant voice followed suit. Humph, let's see how your Grandpa Pig will deal with you. Little Pig couldn't hold himself back any longer. However, Luo Qingtong knew that it could only be unsealed once in a short period of time. Naturally, she couldn't use it easily. She just had to hold it in. Now it was finally Grandpa Pig's turn. Boom. Little Pig's body suddenly emitted a burst of light that enveloped its chubby and plump body. Under such circumstances, its body abruptly dashed forward. Roar. Between the heavens and the earth, a boundless roar that seemed to resound throughout the world, the ancient plains and the endless years of desolation. In the next second, a huge claw covered in scales abruptly extended from mid-air. With a boom, the huge human face was heavily pressed into the ground. At this moment, Chapter 2205. Those distorted faces violently surged and dissipated. Just like how it dealt with Luo Qingtong's sword light, when the claw pressed down on them, they quickly dissipated and gathered again in the air. However, no matter how they twisted and struggled, the huge claw still caught them. There seemed to be a strange power within the claw. Even the illusory bodies of these foreign experts couldn't escape from it. These distorted faces were mixed with their aggregates, and they were ruthlessly suppressed to the ground by Little Pig's true body. Rumble. An incomparably violent wave of dirt rose up in the sky. At the same time, Luo Qingtong's figure flew up in an instant. Attack. Annihilation. Following Luo Qingtong's clear shout, the Heavenly Yuan sect and the other sect's members who were shocked to the extreme by Little Pig's attack immediately regained their senses. They attacked together with Luo Qingtong, Su Yu and the others. They were overwhelmed with shock. It turned out that Luo Qingtong hadn't used her full strength before. Beast Tamer King Gu Guju's death wasn't unjust. If he hadn't taken advantage of the fact that Luo Qingtong's contracted light ball couldn't move and that Little Pig couldn't charge into Luo Qingtong's light pillar, he wouldn't even know how he died. Everyone was shocked, but at the same time they were extremely excited. Now that they were all Luo Qingtong's people, the stronger the girl's strength, the better it was for them. Everyone cheered indescribably in their hearts as they thought of this. Those who had previously submitted to Luo Qingtong were even more glad that they didn't take the wrong path at that time. Otherwise, how would they be able to survive now? Everyone's attacks violently blasted forward. In front of them there were densely packed white bones. The white bones in the center of the forbidden area were gathered by the foreign experts' wills, blocking the path in front of Luo Qingtong and the others to prevent them from leaving. And at this moment, under the attacks of Luo Qingtong and the others, those white bones exploded into pieces one after another. Luo Qingtong's figure swept up in an instant. With a wave of her sleeve, she fiercely swept up Little Pig, who had fallen from the air, and then led everyone to the center of the forbidden area. As long as they left the forbidden area, the foreign experts' wills wouldn't be able to do anything to them. After all, although the foreign experts' wills were incomparably powerful, they relied on the aura of the fallen immortal land to live. It was almost equivalent to being bound in this forbidden area. Once Luo Qingtong and the others left, they would no longer be able to catch up. And when Luo Qingtong and the others' figures swept forward, those distorted human faces rose up from where Little Pig had pressed them down. Their power dissipated from the huge pit underground, forming a huge human face in the air. Compared to before, this huge human face's figure had shrunk by almost half. At this moment, its mouth was wide open, and its eyes were filled with resentment and ruthlessness as it looked in the direction Luo Qingtong and the others left. Chapter 2206. However, there were no more obstacles in front of Luo Qingtong and the others. Their figures flitted quickly. In addition, Luo Qingtong had the life and death sword, which could threaten the wills of those extraterrestrial experts. Every time the girl attacked the back, she would slow down the speed of the giant face's pursuit. Luo Qingtong and the others were getting farther and farther away, and the distance between them was getting bigger and bigger. That huge face suddenly let out a long howl, and then let out a sharp roar. Boom, boom, boom. After hearing its roar, the white bones that were chasing Luo Qingtong and the others suddenly trembled violently. Then, boom. Their bodies exploded into pieces in an instant. In the distance, several sect experts among Luo Qingtong and the others were surprised when they saw this scene. What's going on? How did these white bones explode into pieces in an instant? They were surprised and wanted to inform Luo Qingtong, but when they glanced behind them, they took a deep breath. My God! They were shocked and aghast as they watched the broken white bones in front of them recombine in an instant, turning into a giant white bone that stood between heaven and earth. This white bone was almost the collection of the white bones from before. It stood between heaven and earth like a huge mountain. Brr. The wills of those extraterrestrial experts gathered and rushed toward the giant white bone with a roar in an instant. At the sight of this, the experts from the various sects widened their eyes in shock. They watched the giant face rush into the white bone, and then there was a violent burst of cracking sounds. The giant white bone moved. Boom. The soaring aura almost broke through the intense black fog that shrouded the land of the deceased immortals. They looked at the terrifying white bone that came to life in an instant, and its aura and strength soared in an instant. The sect experts who saw this scene were almost scared out of their wits. Luo? Miss Luo. Their voices were sharp and shrill, and they cried out almost instantly. Hearing their voices, Luo Qingtong and the others who were rushing in front turned around and saw the scene behind them. Suddenly, everyone's pupils contracted violently. Oh my God! The Tianyuan sect master and the others stared at the colossal, mountain-like skeleton and the terrifying presence that surged from it. Immediately their hearts chilled. How could this be? Despair filled the faces of the Heaven Yuan sect master and the others. Even Luo Qingtong's expression was grave. Exalted realm. Looking at the bursts of aura coming from the white skeleton. The tyrannical aura it emitted made Luo Qingtong and the others, who were thousands of meters away, feel suffocated. Purple Venerable Realm Expert. Looking at the rays of light that suddenly blossomed from the white skeleton, the deep purple marks within it were extremely dense, and almost pierced the eyes of the Tianyuan sect master and the others. Those rays of light rippled out from behind the skeleton. A total of 9 halos appeared behind the white skeleton. Level 9 Expert. Purple Venerable Realm 9. When the Tianyuan sect master and the others saw the purple marks on the white skeleton, they were already incomparably shocked. When they saw the 9 huge rays of light behind the white skeleton, they couldn't control themselves. A purple Venerable Expert was already terrifying enough. Chapter 2207. Amethyst Elder's 9th Realm? Luo Qingtong looked at the skeleton that seemed to stand between the heavens and earth. This skeleton gave her a feeling of extreme danger and dread. It was the same feeling Luo Qingtong had when she first crossed over to this strange world and met the heaven-connecting beast. At that time, if she hadn't met Yi Qianxian and borrowed his strength to deal with the heaven-connecting beast, Luo Qingtong wouldn't have been able to escape from the heaven-connecting beast's clutches. And at this moment, this skeleton actually gave her the same feeling. And this was in a situation where her strength had already risen to the Saint Realm. Just how strong was this skeleton? Amethyst Elder's 9th Realm? Just what kind of boundary was that? As if he knew the question in Luo Qingtong's heart, the Sky Branch sect master said with a trembling voice, Miss Luo, you've just reached the Saint Realm and you haven't been in the hidden world for long. Do you know the divisions of strength above the Saint Realm? The truth is that we don't know much, but we do know the general divisions of the realms. The Sky Branch sect master said. As the top echelons of a first-class sect, a Saint Realm powerhouse was the final step of the Saint Realm. They naturally knew more than the average person. After all, they had a certain chance of breaking through the barrier of the Saint Realm in the future and successfully breaking through. Thus, they still had some basic knowledge of the Saint Realm. Above the Saint Realm there are 7 levels. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, purple. Each level is further divided into 9 realms, from the 1st to the 9th. Now, this skeleton has the strength of an Amethyst Elder's 9th Realm. As the Sky Branch Sect Master spoke to hear, his voice was filled with a deep sense of despair. As far as they knew, the Amethyst Elder's ninth realm was the highest boundary of the Saint Realm. It was said that a powerhouse at this level could already dominate a region in the outer realms. It was an existence that could suppress an entire star field. The Sky Branch Sect Master and the others only knew that such a powerhouse existed in this world from the ancient texts of their sects and the words of the Star Alliance's Palace Hall. But they had never seen one before. After all, the True Spill continent was a remote and barren place. It was impossible for a normal High Lord realm powerhouse to come here, much less a supreme powerhouse like a Purple High Lord. Only a high realm powerhouse like the Star Alliance's Temple Master would be sent to guard the True Spill continent. After hearing his words, Luo Qingtong frowned. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. 7 levels? Then why didn't I see any colors on the Star Alliance Hall Masters? Luo Qingtong was referring to the body of the Star Alliance Hall Master and Zhuge Shursan. She could understand why Zhuge Shursan had turned into a Yin corpse. After all, he only retained a trace of the power of the Venerable Realm after his death. It was normal for him to not have a colored halo. But why didn't the Star Alliance Hall Master have any? Luo Qingtong had seen the Star Alliance Palace Master fight outside the land of the deceased immortals. That's because before the Red Venerable Realm, there is another level, and that is the Entering Venerable Realm. The Sky Branch Sect Master said, the so-called Entering Venerable Realm is the level of power that has just entered the Venerable Realm. He bitterly smiled and said, at that time the Venerable Realm powerhouse has already come into contact with the power of immortal spiritual energy and can absorb it into their attacks. But they haven't completely comprehended it yet. Chapter 2208. At that time, the Venerable Realm expert would be a true Venerable Realm expert. The deeper one's understanding of the immortal chi, the stronger the energy used, and the deeper the radiance around the Venerable Realm expert. From red to purple, that's how it came to be. And purple is the meaning of the purple chi from the east. It's the strongest Venerable Realm expert. And the 9th level of the Amethyst Venerable Realm is the peak of the Amethyst Venerable Realm. As the Heavenly Branch Sect Master spoke, his face was filled with disappointment. Before they broke through to the Venerable Realm, they often fantasized about the strength of the Amethyst Venerable Realm. How terrifying and unbridled would it be? But now that they saw the 9th level of the Amethyst Venerable Realm, they couldn't feel happy at all. Because the strength of this skeleton had reached such a terrifying level, they didn't have any hope of escaping. Even if Luo Qingtong had displayed all kinds of powerful and unpredictable abilities in front of them, they still couldn't escape. Furthermore, the giant claw that had just descended from the sky had pressed the huge face to the ground, displaying an absolute and domineering power. But Little Pig had already fainted. No matter how powerful Luo Qingtong was, no matter how many tricks she had, it was impossible for her to cross the huge gap between the Venerable Realm and the 9th level of the Amethyst Venerable Realm. The gap between the two realms wasn't something that could be bridged with ordinary talent and strength. When everyone thought of this, their hearts were filled with indescribable despair. They were about to escape from this forbidden area, but they didn't expect the foreign experts to gather their wills and have such a trick up their sleeves. They were actually able to condense all those skeletons together, turning them into an indomitable skeleton and attaching themselves to it. How many foreign experts had died in the land of the fallen immortals? When these people's corpses were condensed together and attached to the huge face, it wasn't surprising that they could reach the 9th level of the Amethyst Venerable Realm. Everyone's hearts were filled with despair, and the foreign experts' wills in the skeleton were also filled with anger. They hadn't used this trick before because once their bodies were completely condensed and fused with the skeleton, they couldn't be separated anymore. They couldn't scatter and gather like before when they formed the huge face. These foreign experts' wills also had their own selfish motives. They wanted to separate from the sector beast and obtain its flesh, blood, and the power of law origin to reconstruct their bodies. They didn't want to fuse with each other. But now, after they entered the skeleton, they could no longer separate. Not only that, if this skeleton was destroyed, they would also be destroyed. They couldn't rely on the aura of the land of the fallen immortals to be reborn. But no matter how unwilling they were, seeing that Luo Qingtong and the others were about to escape this forbidden zone, they could only compromise. Even if they fused into the same body and shared the same soul with countless consciousnesses, it was still better than letting Luo Qingtong and the others escape from this forbidden zone and completely losing track of the sector beast. Plus, once he escapes, she will find a way to destroy the land of the deceased immortals. She will never let him go again. With this thought in mind, the extraterrestrial experts shattered all the white bones and condensed them into a giant skeleton. Chapter 2209. Boom. When the huge skeleton's aura soared into the sky, it had already swept into the land of the deceased immortals. The Star Alliance Temple Master and the others who were rushing towards the Forbidden Zone were indescribably surprised. They watched as the black fog around them all rushed towards the direction of the Forbidden Zone. And there, waves of majestic and terrifying aura were being emitted. The power contained in those auras caused the expressions of the Star Alliance Temple Masters to change greatly. Temple Master? The people in the Star Alliance Temple Master looked at the Star Alliance Temple Master with bewildered expressions. The power of those auras was too domineering and overbearing, and they vaguely gave them an extremely terrifying feeling. It had to be known that there was no lack of venerable realm powerhouses among the Star Alliance Temple Masters, but they were not as powerful as the Star Alliance Temple Master. Now that they felt the huge power coming from the center of the Forbidden Zone, they were shocked and frightened. What the hell was going on? How could there be such a shocking and terrifying aura in this low-level True Spill continent? After the Star Alliance Temple Master felt the terrifying power in the Forbidden Zone, his expression changed greatly. But soon, he calmed down and looked at the direction of the Forbidden Zone with even more fanaticism. "What are you afraid of?" he coldly shouted. "Let's continue." The Star Alliance Temple Master was excited to the extreme. These auras were obviously the collective thoughts of those powerhouses from outside the domain. The stronger the auras they emitted, the more powerful the sector beast was. They had to do this in order to deal with it. Under such circumstances, how could he not be excited? The stronger the sector beast was, the stronger his strength would be after he obtained it in the future. Haha. The Star Alliance Palace Master laughed and rushed towards the forbidden area in front of him at an even faster speed than before. The people from the Star Alliance Temple behind him were very confused, but when they saw the Star Alliance Temple Master's actions, they looked at each other in dismay. Finally, they followed the Star Alliance Temple Master and rushed towards the Forbidden Zone. Not far in front of them, Yi Qianren and the others, who had concealed themselves and were also rushing towards the Forbidden Zone, suddenly changed their expressions when they sensed the aura coming from the Forbidden Zone in front of them. "Master! It's Amethyst Elder's level 9 power." Unlike the Star Alliance Palace Master and the others, Bei Qing, Fengyu, and the others sensed the terrifying power emitted by the huge skeleton almost immediately. They sucked in a breath of cold air in their hearts. Amethyst Elder's level 9 power. My God, what did Evil Doctor and the others do? They actually forced the collective thoughts of those powerhouses from outside the domain to emit such a terrifying power? Just as their voices rang out, a black stream of light exploded in front of them and then disappeared in front of them. Yi Qianxin's eyes were cold, and he rushed towards the Forbidden Zone almost instantly. If it weren't for the special geographical environment here that prevented him from tearing space, Yi Qianxian would have done so immediately and appeared in front of Luo Qingtong. Amethyst Elder's level 9 power was definitely not something that woman could deal with. It was the same even if she had contracted the sector beast. Chapter 2210. As for the newly born realm beast, it was still far from being invincible. The world lands it carried had yet to be nurtured. Even if it shared its innate ability to control the origin of laws with Luo Qingtong, it could only increase her strength by a little. It was far from reaching the level where she could deal with the Amethyst Elder's level 9 strength. Damn it, the combined consciousness of those powerhouses from outside the star domain had actually reached such a level. What did that woman do to them in the Forbidden Land? Yi Qianren's heart was filled with pride and anger. He was proud of Luo Qingtong's extraordinary strength and ability. He was angry that this woman didn't know how to rely on him more. Couldn't she just obediently wait for him to come over? Just as Yi Qianren and the others were rushing towards the Forbidden Zone. Bang! In the Forbidden Land, the giant skeleton suddenly moved. Countless distorted faces screamed from within its body. Then, it controlled the giant skeleton and fiercely rushed towards Luo Qingtong and the others. The giant bone sword in its hand rose into the sky. The boundless power shook the entire land of the fallen immortals, and even the entire hidden world, to the point where it began to tremble. The 9th level Amethyst Elder's strength was already enough to look down on a star field. This was also because this power was displayed in the land of the fallen immortals. The land of the fallen immortals was in the hidden world and belonged to the True Spill continent. As for the True Spill continent, as a 9th level continent, it didn't have any celestial spiritual energy. Otherwise, this skeleton's attack alone was enough to shatter the entire True Spill continent and even the hidden world. Countless living beings would die in anguish. This was the strength of an Amethyst Elder. However, without the existence of celestial spiritual energy, the 9th level Amethyst Elder's strength wasn't that strong. Even so, it wasn't something that anyone below the Amethyst Elder realm could resist. Not to mention Luo Qingtong and the others. They weren't even in the Amethyst Elder realm. Bang bang bang. The giant sword light instantly shattered the void and tore the entire land of the fallen immortals into pieces. Every fragment was enough to kill anyone below the Amethyst Elder realm. Rumble. Along with this attack, the black aura in the countless forbidden zones surged, instantly turning into vapor and liquid. It was like a surging tide that came crashing down. Bang. The ancient heavenly spirit tree above Luo Qingtong and the others exploded into pieces in an instant. Its body shrunk rapidly until it turned into a black seed. Obviously, it couldn't withstand the impact of the black aura. The moment the ancient sky spirit was shattered, the people from the outermost sects cried out in agony one after another. Their bodies were completely melted by the thick black fog that was rolling over, and they disappeared. Seeing this scene, Luo Qingtong's eyes suddenly narrowed. 9-layered exquisite pagoda. Luo Qingtong shouted. In an instant, countless auras from the pagoda were drawn out by her and enveloped everyone around her. The aura from the 9-layered exquisite pagoda fiercely rushed out, and the black aura that was rushing towards them was pushed away. But this was only temporary. Without the support of the ancient heavenly spirit tree, the black aura would come back again. The aura from the 9-layered exquisite pagoda that Luo Qingtong could draw out wasn't endless. Chapter 22:11. Boom. The terrifying power accompanied by the black aura rushed above Luo Qingtong and the others. The black aura was pushed away by the aura of the 9-story exquisite pagoda, but the white bone's power wasn't affected at all. Its giant sword slashed down in Luo Qingtong's direction. Luo Qingtong's eyes froze. Her blood-red eyes stared at the white bone's power attack, trying to find a flaw and avoid it. After all, they were only a step away from the forbidden area. As long as they could avoid this attack, Luo Qingtong would have a way to take Su Yu and the others out of here in an instant. At that time, even if the white bone had infinite abilities and boundless power, it couldn't do anything to them. But, no. Luo Qingtong's blood-red eyes spun rapidly. Her pupil technique was activated to the extreme. The flaw in this attack faintly appeared in her eyes. But it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough for them to use this flaw to escape from this sword. Luo Qingtong's eyes froze. The power of this attack was simply too tyrannical. Amethyst Elder 9th Realm, above the Venerable Realm, the first level, the pinnacle of power, overlooking the star field. Unless Luo Qingtong could destroy the land of the deceased immortals and destroy the source of the extraterrestrial expert's power, Luo Qingtong couldn't escape from this sword. The difference in power was too great. The expression in Luo Qingtong's eyes was extremely solemn. At this moment, Su Yu and Su Xiaoxiao rushed in front of her. Master, immediately use the aura of the 9-story exquisite pagoda to infuse the golden-winged condor and the others, then leave this place. Don't worry about us. Yes, boss, you should leave quickly. Su Yu, Su Xiaoxiao, and the others knew that if it weren't for them with Luo Qingtong's strength alone, she might have already escaped the pursuit of those foreign experts. They were the ones who dragged Luo Qingtong down. Master, leave quickly. Their faces were resolute as they brandished their swords and charged towards the huge attack from the white bones. Only when they were dead would Master be able to leave without any worries. Moreover, their deaths could buy some time for Luo Qingtong. Even if it was only for 1 or 2 breaths, it should be enough for Luo Qingtong to escape. Once Master left this place, this skeleton would not be able to harm her. The combined wills of the extraterrestrial experts could only look at the ocean and lament their inadequacy. This was the only thing they could do for Luo Qingtong. Their master had planned for them and helped them improve their strength. Amidst all the dangers in the land of the fallen immortals, he had made the most appropriate arrangements for them. In the end, he had always protected them. They were the ones who failed to live up to Master's expectations and couldn't share his worries. Now, to be able to escort Luo Qingtong safely away was their only wish. In this life, they were willing to be the shield and sword in the girl's hands. They would sacrifice their flesh and blood to protect her. Go! With a cold shout from Su Yu, the group was about to rush out from Luo Qingtong's side. They all clasped an immortal jade bone in their hands. When they rushed out, they would immediately swallow it. After their mutation, they should be able to buy 1 or 2 breaths of time for Luo Qingtong, allowing Luo Qingtong to safely escape from the attack of this huge white bone sword. Chapter 22:12. Shut up all of you. Luo Qingtong's voice was cold. She stood there, her red clothes fluttering in the wind. She looked at the giant white bone sword in the sky that was slashing towards her. The light in her eyes changed violently. In her previous life, everyone in the ancient martial arts world knew about supernatural abilities. The supreme eye sorcerer Luo Qingtong was evil and arrogant. She was cold by nature. She would rather betray the world than let the world betray her. She was an evil eye. She was cold, bloodthirsty and ruthless. Those who provoked her would be returned 1,000 times. Those who abused her would be killed 10,000 times. In order to live a better life, she could sacrifice everything around her. But all of this changed after she transmigrated to this strange world. She saved Su Yu and the others just to have more help by her side. In Luo Qingtong's opinion, her help and improvement for them was normal. After all, how could the other party's strength not be enough for her subordinates to work for her? What's more, dealing with her people was like slapping her in the face. She naturally had to help the other party get back at them. From the beginning, her starting point was all for herself. But this original intention slowly changed as she got to know Su Yu and the others. They were willing to go through fire and water for her. They were willing to risk their lives for her. They were willing to fight against the heavens for her. No matter if she was in adversity or prosperity, these people had never betrayed her in the slightest. She stood proudly in the world. They cheered for her and felt honored. When she was in deep danger, they exhausted everything for her. They would not abandon her even if they died. Luo Qingtong's heart was filled with warmth little by little. She had once mocked the people of this world for being unpredictable and cold. She refused to believe in people's hearts and feelings. But now she had gained unparalleled friendship. Su Yu and the others were going to die for her? As their master, she would not allow it. All of you get back here. Luo Qingtong's eyes were cold. She looked straight at the huge bone sword falling from the sky. She held the life and death sword in her right hand. Buzz buzz buzz. The long sword engraved with divine inscriptions hummed softly in Luo Qingtong's hand. Luo Qingtong looked at this long sword. This was Tian Mingzi's inheritance that she obtained from the Immortal Slayer Palace. Even the powerful Immortal Slaughterer Palace was destroyed because of it. Along the way, this sword had brought Luo Qingtong countless benefits and conveniences. In the future, once the divine inscriptions on it were perfected, it would definitely be a unique divine weapon. But now Luo Qingtong wants to destroy this sword. With the power of the self-explosion of the life and death sword, it would definitely be able to withstand the bone sword attack of this skeleton. At that time, she would be able to lead Su Yu and the others out of this place. Even if the sword was gone, she could always make another one in the future. But if he was gone, then he was truly gone. Luo Qingtong would rather use this life and death yin-yang sword in exchange for the lives of Su Yu and the others. Buzz. Luo Qingtong poured her aura into the life and death yin-yang sword. Instantly, the life and death two-right sword in Luo Qingtong's hand kept buzzing and vibrating. It almost flew up and flew towards the huge white bone sword that was smashing towards her. At this moment, chirp chirp chirp. The little ball in Luo Qingtong's arms suddenly jumped up at this moment. It looked at the huge bone sword that was flying towards Luo Qingtong, and the small tuft of hair on its head twisted in circles. Chapter 22:13. Hiss. Luo Qingtong was in pain, and the aura she injected into the life and death yin-yang sword was instantly cut off. Before she could come back to her senses, her vision turned black. Boom. In front of Luo Qingtong appeared a starry sky with an inverted Milky Way. In the boundless Milky Way, one face after another was reflected. This is... Luo Qingtong was extremely shocked to find that one of the faces was actually her from her previous life. The Supreme Ocular Sorcerer Evil Eye. The Supreme Maiden of the 24th century, dressed in a light blue dress, was as cute and lovely as an oriental porcelain doll. But the smile at the corner of her mouth was unusually cold, and the light at the bottom of her eyes was unbridled and cold. That was her from her previous life, the supreme being of the 24th century in the ancient martial world with supernatural abilities. She did things her own way, unbridled and cold. What was going on? How did he end up here in his previous life? Moreover, those other people were also him? Luo Qingtong looked at the figures and faces in the Milky Way. These people all looked exactly the same as her, only their clothes and auras were different. Looking at these figures, Luo Qingtong suddenly had a strange idea in her mind. These people couldn't all be from her previous life, right? Just as she was thinking about this, a voice suddenly sounded in her mind. Chirp chirp. That's right. It was the voice of Xiao Tuanzi. Luo Qingtong recognized Xiao Tuanzi's voice immediately. Then she saw the soft and cute Xiao Tuanzi appear in front of her. Chirp chirp chirp. Xiao Tuanzi jumped in front of Luo Qingtong, and then looked at the figures in the Milky Way in front of her. Strangely, Luo Qingtong couldn't understand Xiao Tuanzi's words when she was outside, but now she clearly understood the meaning of Xiao Tuanzi's words in her mind. Master, these are all your previous lives. My innate ability is reincarnation. I can help you recall your strongest power from the endless reincarnation. As long as you have reached that level, I can help you summon that power back and let you have that level of strength in an instant. But I'm still young, so the time I can be summoned back is limited. And the stronger you are, the shorter the time you can summon them back. Master, take a look at the reincarnation river. Is there anything stronger than Baigu? Xiao Tuanzi chirped, looking at her with eyes full of expectation, but also very nervous. This ability of his was of little value. It would only be useful if the opponent was extremely powerful. Otherwise, if the other party was a complete weakling in his previous life, his ability would be useless. Therefore, when it was in Luo Qingtong's arms, it didn't tell Luo Qingtong about its ability. He was just afraid that Luo Qingtong would dislike it. However, now that the gigantic skeleton was charging over, it could no longer hide. You should at least try harder. If it really doesn't work, then we'll talk about it. But Master was so powerful and her ability was so powerful. She must have been very powerful in her previous life, right? With this thought in mind, Xiao Tuanzi activated his innate ability the moment the gigantic skeleton sword charged over. At this moment, time in the outside world was still. Xiao Tuanzi looked at Luo Qingtong expectantly, hoping that she could find an incomparably powerful strength from his innate ability. Chapter 22:14. And when Xiao Tuanzi's words sounded, Luo Qingtong knew what was going on. It turned out that these people were really her previous life? Luo Qingtong looked surprised. She didn't expect Xiao Tuanzi to have such an ability. Although she had heard from Little Pig that the ability of the sector beast was extraordinary. But Xiao Tuanzi was cut out by her. Luo Qingtong didn't know if this had any effect on it. Therefore, when Xiao Tuanzi hid in her arms and didn't move, she didn't think too much about it. But she didn't expect Xiao Tuanzi to have such an ability. It could summon the peak power of her previous life? Luo Qingtong thought so, and immediately looked at the image of her supreme pupil master from the 24th century. She didn't know about other previous lives. But as the supreme pupil master from the 24th century, she knew it very well. Although her strength in her previous life couldn't be compared to now because of the cutoff of spiritual aura. But in her previous life, Luo Qingtong's pupil technique had been cultivated to the peak of perfection. More importantly, in her previous life, she had explored countless deep mountains and old forests and copied many of the immortal secret manuals of the sects whose ancestors were said to be cultivators. At that time there was no spiritual aura on earth, let alone immortal aura. Therefore, after Luo Qingtong copied those immortal secret manuals, she couldn't use them at all. But this time, in this different world, it was completely different. And in this different world, the Venerable Realm experts had to use the immortal aura to advance. Was the immortal aura in the immortal secret manuals similar to the immortal aura? If so, then the power of those immortal secret manuals was comparable to the power of the Venerable Realm and above. In this way, as long as Luo Qingtong could summon the power of her supreme pupil master from her previous life, relying on the power of her peak pupil technique, she could perfectly display those immortal secret manuals. The power she could display should be able to offset the giant sword light from the huge white bone. As Luo Qingtong thought so, she immediately raised her hand and was about to point at the image of the supreme ocular sorcerer in her previous life. However, at this moment, her gaze suddenly caught a glimpse of a figure not far away. The figure was completely covered in blood-red armor. The armor was unusually tight and charming, outlining the woman's tall breasts and slender waist. That charming and enchanting demeanor seemed to carry 1,000 kinds of amorous feelings, 10,000 kinds of grace. It just so happened that a type of absolute and domineering aura lingered around her body. That 1,000 types of flirtatious and graceful bearing had all transformed into an unbridled arrogance that was above the 9 heavens, a might that ruled over the world. His domineering aura suppressed all worlds. Evil, unrestrained, enchanting, unbridled charm. The evil and domineering aura emanating from her body was even stronger than when she was a supreme ocular technique master in her previous life. Luo Qingtong's eyes flashed when she saw this figure. She immediately raised her hand and pointed at her body. I choose her. As Luo Qingtong's voice rang out, in an instant the little dumpling chirped twice and then there was a boom. The entire starry river hanging upside down in the sky instantly flowed with a rumbling sound. The countless starlight, the power of time, and the light of reincarnation on it all flowed rapidly in an instant. The power of countless stars flowed down in reverse. Chapter 22:15. Boom. In the outside world, time had stopped at the moment when Xiao Tuanzi had bitten Luo Qingtong. Master. Su Yu and the others watched as Luo Qingtong was bitten by Xiao Tuanzi. The aura that they had injected into the life and death yin-yang sword was cut off. They were almost defenseless as they rushed toward the huge bone sword in front of them. They were so anxious that their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. They were almost heartbroken as they rushed toward Luo Qingtong. Master. They desperately wanted to run toward Luo Qingtong and block this terrifying attack for her. It was so powerful that it almost destroyed this part of the world. Their eyes and faces were full of tears. Master. Everyone knew that they would never be able to block this attack. Even if they paid the price with their lives, the biggest possibility was that they would die together with Luo Qingtong. They were so sad that they couldn't suppress their grief. How could this be? It shouldn't be like this. Master shouldn't have died here. She still had a lot of years ahead of her. She had incomparably monstrous strength and extraordinary abilities waiting for her to display. She should have made a name for herself in the outside world. From then on, she would laugh proudly in the world and awe the heavens. How could she die here? Master. Boss. Everyone's voices were almost crying blood. At this moment, a black lightning bolt not far away rushed toward them. It was as if it could destroy everything in its path. The swift and fierce figure that tore through the air was even fiercer and more wanton than the attack from the huge white bone sword, shattering the surrounding space into pieces. Qingtong. The moment he saw that Luo Qingtong was about to be hit by the huge bone sword, Yi Qianxian flicked his sleeves and was about to attack regardless of the consequences. Even if his attack was likely to cause a boundless catastrophe in the land of the deceased immortals and even the hidden world, he couldn't care less. However, just as he was about to attack, all of a sudden, boom! An explosive sound suddenly resounded between heaven and earth. Then a vast and boundless aura suddenly came from the direction of Luo Qingtong. The girl's evil and arrogant aura reached its peak in an instant. Her eyes were blood red, and the images of the myriad worlds and the countless galaxies were reflected in them. Everything in the world, the sun, the moon, and the stars were all in her eyes. Ha! The young girl's figure floated in midair, her unruly and arrogant aura directly facing the giant white bone sword in front of her. She lifted her hand and brushed the hair on her forehead. The girl's figure was indescribably languid and domineering, with an unbridled charm. Ant-like thing, you dare to come and deal with this lord? The appearance of the giant white bone sword was reflected in his blood-red eyes. Luo Qingtong, or rather that figure, chuckled and waved her hand. In an instant, Su Yu and the others who were about to rush in front of her, were all blown away by a gentle force. At the same time, Luo Qingtong lifted a finger and casually pushed it forward. In an instant, the terrifying bone sword attack, which carried an unparalleled aura and almost broke the entire world apart, was blocked by Luo Qingtong's hand. Then Luo Qingtong suddenly flicked her finger. Clang clang clang. An incomparably loud and intense sound suddenly resounded between heaven and earth. That incomparably terrifying giant white bone sword, which towered into the sky, was actually casually flicked by Luo Qingtong. Chapter 22:16. Rumble. Heaven and earth shook violently. Under Luo Qingtong's finger, the huge white bone sword was instantly smashed into pieces. Countless white bones floated down from the sky. It made the peerless figure in the sky look like a demon, evil, domineering, and unparalleled. Roar! The huge white bone was shaken by Luo Qingtong's finger and was instantly sent flying backward. The grief on Su Yu and the rest's faces froze. Their tears stopped in their eyes. Their faces were filled with extreme grief and despair. At this moment, all of them were filled with uncontrollable shock and ecstasy. Master! The group of people's faces were filled with tears, laughter, shock, and joy. Master is fine. Boss is fine. The group of people hugged each other, crying, laughing, and cheering. As for the people from the Sky Yuan sect and the other sects, their mouths were agape as they looked at the domineering figure in the sky. Their eyes were filled with shock and horror. They could not utter a single word. The attack of the 9th-level Amethyst Elder. The peerless attack had been blocked by Luo Qingtong. When they saw the white bone sword turn into white bone powder that floated down from the sky, everyone thought that they had seen wrongly. In the end, they didn't see wrongly. Instead, Luo Qingtong, she really did it? Hiss. The Heaven Yuan sect master and the others all gasped in shock. They looked at the peerless figure in the sky and didn't know what to say. This girl's future is limitless. An elder beside the Sky Yuan sect master muttered, "Sect master, our Sky Yuan sect is on the right side this time." His voice was filled with zeal and reverence. He stared at the figure in the sky and said in a low voice, "Our Sky Yuan sect will soar in the future. Our legacy will be in the future." When he said that, the Sky Yuan sect master and the rest of the holy venerables couldn't help but tremble. Then everyone looked at the girl in the sky with zeal and reverence. They said in a low voice, "Indeed." The Sky Yuan sect master's voice was low and powerful. He said decisively, "Pass down my orders. After we return, Zhu Yi and Su Qing will get married immediately." At the same time, the position of Sky Yuan sect master will be passed to Zhu Yi. When he said that, everyone from the Sky Yuan sect was shocked. However, no one objected to it. Not only did no one express anything, but the crowd instead revealed expressions of ecstasy. The Grand Dean was Luo Qingtong's teacher. With the other party taking over the Heavenly Yuan sect, their relationship with Luo Qingtong would only become closer in the future. Sect master is brilliant. The people from the Sky Yuan sect were overjoyed. When the people from the other sects heard the Sky Yuan sect master's words, they cursed the Sky Yuan sect for being shameless. They actually wanted to use such a method to deepen their relationship with Luo Qingtong. At the same time, they were filled with envy and jealousy. Why didn't they encounter such a good thing in their sects? Why didn't they have someone who was on good terms with Luo Qingtong? Many people from the other sects felt regretful. Chapter 22:17. Even if it was just to express her attitude, given the girl's character, they would still benefit immensely in the future. Everyone had already regretted it once before. But now, as Luo Qingtong revealed more and more strength, her abilities became more and more powerful. They were so regretful that their intestines were about to be tied up. The sect masters and elders who were originally on good terms with the Heavenly Yuan sect and who were very likely to have a relationship with Luo Qingtong were so regretful that they wanted to jump off a building. While everyone's hearts were filled with shock and fear, not far away Yi Qianming, who was about to attack, also silently withdrew his attack. He stood above the boundless shattered sky. The surrounding spatial turbulence and fragments violently surged around him, but they were cut into pieces by the invisible aura that seeped out from his body. Not a single bit of it could get close to his body. He looked deeply at the peerless and dazzling figure in front of him. Her figure was hidden in the sky and was not revealed. The girl's figure was too dazzling. Proud like the scorching sun, proud like the dawn, bright like the bright moon, and fierce like the endless waves. Yi Qianxian had never thought that when he rushed over, he would see Luo Qingtong blossoming so recklessly. She was like a stunning flower wrapped in an inconspicuous bud. Once it bloomed, it immediately shed its ordinary appearance. The heavens shook, and the myriad worlds filled with fragrance. The blood-red figure in the sky was arrogant and domineering to the extreme. That unbridled and charming demeanor made it seem as if the myriad worlds were toys in the palm of her hand. She could control the universe with one hand and destroy the world with a flip of her hand. Yi Qianxian stared deeply at Luo Qingtong. The love in his eyes was so uncontrollable that it seemed as if it could burn the entire world. At this moment, the huge skeleton in the sky screamed coldly again after being pushed back by Luo Qingtong. And in the next second, boom boom boom. In the sky, countless black auras surged violently at this moment, and then swept into the huge white bone. Rumble. In the land of the fallen immortals, the black aura of death and hostility were all absorbed by the enormous skeleton in an instant. In just an instant, the huge skeleton's body grew even taller. Not only that, but the deep purple color around its body had also become denser. At this moment, the 9 halos that revolved around it faintly showed signs of merging into one. After doing all this, the huge skeleton roared angrily and charged towards Luo Qingtong with a heavy step. The foreign experts didn't know how Luo Qingtong managed to block their attack. But this time they would absolutely not fail again. With the death energy and evil energy of the entire immortal graveyard as their power, this attack was the strongest attack of the 9 realms of the Amethyst Elder. No one below the 9th level of the Amethyst Elder could stop him. The lives of the small realm beast and the young girl were definitely theirs. Once they killed the young girl, they would devour her soul completely. They would imprison her in the land of the fallen immortals forever and never let her reincarnate. Roar. Chapter 22:18. Master. Seeing this attack that was even more majestic and terrifying than the previous attack of the huge bone sword, Su Yu and the others' faces instantly froze. They looked nervously in Luo Qingtong's direction. They didn't know if the young girl could block this attack. Master. While everyone was feeling apprehensive, the girl in the sky had a languid expression on her face, and her charm was wanton to the extreme. She glanced lightly at the attack from the giant white skeleton and suddenly chuckled. Originally, I wanted to play with you for a while longer. After all, it wasn't easy for this lord's power to return. However, time's almost up. She raised her head as she spoke, and the blood-red pupils in her eyes began to spin like a blazing sun. Soaring blood sun, 10,000 blood will slash. Luo Qingtong's voice rang out. The girl stood in the sky with her arms crossed. Her gaze was cold and indifferent as she looked at the incoming attack from the giant white skeleton. She didn't even change her posture. In an instant, countless blood-red blazing suns rose in her eyes. Those blood-red blazing suns rose from her eyes, and in the next second, with a clang, they all turned into rays of light that resembled crescent moons. When the blood-red light rose from Luo Qingtong's eyes, an identical scene appeared in the sky outside. Countless blood-red rays of light appeared in the sky, accompanied by violent clanging sounds. Then, with a boom, they flew towards the giant white skeleton in front of them. In an instant it was cut into pieces. Ah! In the sky, the intertwined wills of the extraterrestrial experts had no power to resist the blood-red rays of light. Their bodies were cut into pieces, and their wills were eliminated. Their wills, which were supposed to be illusory, wouldn't be easily hurt by ordinary attacks. However, under those rays of blood-red light, they had no power to dodge or fight back. Their screams were accompanied by those white bones, and in an instant, they were cut into pieces by the swarming rays of light. Rumble. The ground and sky of the fallen immortal land shook violently when the wills of the alien experts were sliced into pieces. The wills of the alien experts were the seal and support of the land of the fallen immortals. Now that the wills of the extraterrestrial experts had been severed and eliminated, the aura and light that shrouded the land of the fallen immortals also vanished in an instant. The air and sunlight from the outside had entered the land of the fallen immortals. From now on, there would be no more immortal burial grounds in the hidden world. Boom boom boom. Amidst the great tremors, the girl in the sky moved lightly, and in a flash she appeared where Yi Qianxian was hiding. This lord's boy toy? Seeing the person hiding in the air, the girl chuckled and raised her hand to pinch Yi Qianxian's chin. The man did not dodge and allowed her to hold his chin. Firstly, Luo Qingtong was very strong. If he resisted, he would inevitably hurt her. Secondly, this woman actually lost consciousness again. Yi Qianxian frowned as he looked at the girl in front of him, who was even more beautiful and enchanting than usual. This was the second time he had seen Luo Qingtong like this. What was wrong with this woman? Why did she become like this every time she lost consciousness? Chapter 22:19. His body suddenly stiffened. The girl grabbed his chin and pulled him closer to her. Then she kissed him. This lord likes your concern. This is a reward for you. Remember to keep it up in the future, HM? The young girl smiled wickedly, and then her voice disappeared in his mouth. A pair of thin and soft lips pressed against his. In an instant Yi Qianxian's mind buzzed and he didn't know what to do. He suddenly held the back of the young girl's head and deepened the kiss. Yi Qianxian's willpower was extremely strong. In this world there was almost nothing that could shake his willpower. But that was before he met Luo Qingtong. After meeting Luo Qingtong, his willpower was as thin as paper. Just a light kiss from the young girl, a glance from her, was enough to break all of his principles and perseverance. Moreover, the young girl came with boundless power. She was domineering, unrestrained, enchanting and charming. Yi Qianxian couldn't resist at all. He originally wanted to ask who the other party was, and find out some information about Luo Qingtong's loss of consciousness. But the young girl's kiss instantly disintegrated. However, sensing his movements, Luo Qingtong's eyes widened, and she raised her hand to block his hand. This lord doesn't like male pets taking the initiative? Jim? As Luo Qingtong spoke, she opened her mouth and bit Yi Qianxian's lips. She had bitten him hard this time. Yi Qianren couldn't help but groan. She could feel that she had bitten her lips to the point of bleeding. You. Before he could get angry, the young girl's lips pressed against his again. Good boy. Luo Qingtong lightly licked his lips. The evil smile in her eyes was enchanting and domineering. This is your punishment. Remember it in the future. You are this lord's man. Even if you want to take the initiative, only this lord can do it. Jim? While speaking, Luo Qingtong directly blocked Yi Qianxian's lips. That action was domineering and powerful. Yi Qianxian was so angry that his face darkened. Did this woman really treat him as a pet boy? Yi Qianxian was grinding his teeth in his heart, but he couldn't do anything about Luo Qingtong. If this woman didn't have the strength, he could easily capture her. However, Luo Qingtong was extremely strong. Yi Qianxian was afraid of hurting her, so he did not dare to make a move. He could only let her suppress him. Just as he was feeling annoyed, Luo Qingtong's body suddenly went soft and she fell on top of him. Clear pupil. Yi Qianxian's eyes narrowed. Ignoring the anger in his heart, he raised his hand to catch Luo Qingtong's limp body. Luo Qingtong leaned into his arms and felt dizzy. She shook her head with all her might, and it took her a lot of effort to wake up. She felt weak all over, as if all her strength and stamina had been sucked out. What was going on? Luo Qingtong frowned and thought carefully. Then she remembered that she had chosen a power from her previous life to help her with the help of the small sector beast. Was this the aftereffect of using the power from her previous life? But why was her mind blank and she couldn't remember anything? This situation was very similar to when she lost control in the past. Luo Qingtong frowned. She was not sure if she had succeeded in using the power from her previous life. She raised her head and looked around, wanting to see how the huge skeleton was doing. Chapter 22:20. She raised her head and saw the man in front of her. Qianming? Luo Qingtong looked at the man in front of her in a daze. The most dazed thing was, why was there a bite mark on Yi Qianming's lips? Luo Qingtong stared at the bite mark and before she could react she blurted out, Qianming, why is there a bite mark on your lips? Who bit him? Luo Qingtong was about to ask this when she suddenly remembered. With this man's strength, who could leave a bite mark on his lips? It seemed that the bite was not light and blood was seeping out. Luo Qingtong didn't think that Yi Qianming was a masochist. Biting himself? Then it must be, cough cough cough. Luo Qingtong laid in Yi Qianming's arms and coughed violently. She also felt that her lips were red and swollen. There was no need to guess who the culprit who bit Yi Qianming was. But why did she bite Yi Qianming for no reason? Luo Qingtong was thinking when she heard the man's cold snort above her head. What do you think? Ha ha, Luo Qingtong laughed and changed the topic. But, Qianming, what happened to me? Also, where's that huge skeleton? Yi Qianming narrowed his eyes and looked at her. After confirming that she really didn't know about this, he snorted, Your strength increased sharply just now. That skeleton was killed by you. His eyes were deep as he said this. Luo Qingtong's strength was simply terrifying. Even Yi Qianming might not be able to take her down even if his meridians were to burst. How did her strength increase so much all of a sudden? Yi Qianming looked deeply at Luo Qingtong. After the latter heard that she killed the skeleton, her eyes blinked slightly. I really killed it? So the power from her previous life was really used successfully? Yes. Yi Qianming nodded. One hit, one kill. His expression was indifferent. With his strength, he could naturally see that Luo Qingtong was able to kill the skeleton with her first move. The reason why he used 2 moves was because he was intentionally going easy on him. Therefore, he directly described it as a one-hit kill. He knew that what Luo Qingtong wanted to know was her strength at that time. Sure enough, after hearing his words, Luo Qingtong's eyes instantly lit up. A one-hit kill. Didn't that mean that the power of the previous life that he had chosen was much stronger than the Purple Elder's 9th level? It was indeed the right choice to change the candidate at the last minute. It was just that losing consciousness was a bit of a joke. Luo Qingtong didn't like the feeling of being out of control. In the past, because she often lost control, she had to control her temper, not to mention losing her consciousness for a little power. If this drawback was unavoidable, then she might not use the little dumpling's innate ability in the future. Speaking of the little dumpling, Luo Qingtong suddenly remembered that she didn't know where the little dumpling was. She reached out and searched her body. Very quickly, she found the little dumpling lying in her sleeve, looking soft and crying. The little dumpling looked at her with a pitiful expression and pursed its lips. If it wasn't for the fact that it had no strength left, it would have burst into tears long ago. It couldn't be helped. It didn't expect that the power of the previous life that Luo Qingtong had chosen would be so strong. With its current ability, it was completely unable to summon that power. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.